So I'm just a little bit bummed right now. When I rolled on my first coat, I don't know why I forgot about this, but I did. And normally what I do is, before I start rolling the paint out, is I take the roller and I roll it up and down some really sticky tape just to kind of pull any lint and fuzz and just loose pieces of roller hair off. And I was in a hurry and I didn't. And all the fuzz came off of the roller, but it all came off in the paint. Not cool. So rather than being able to come in the following day and roll off my second, top coat, I had to let it sit for a day and let it cure and come back and wet sand everything off. So I'm wet sanding today. Yay! Good times. If you happen to have the same brain fart that I did, and you've got to come back and sand this all down just to kind of smooth it over, I'm using 400 grit, and I'm going to be wet sanding. You can do this by hand, but I happen to have a really cool little sander here from Quick Cut, so that's what I'm going to be using. This is going to go really quick, and we're going to get this straightened out. Well, round two. We're going to get our second coat of paint rolled on here. I'm going to do two things differently. One, I'm going to make sure I don't have any more lint on my roller before I paint this, so I don't have to wet sand this all back down again. And two, we're going to be adding what's called a flattening agent to this coat of paint. The Awlgrip, kind of right out of the can, has a very high gloss, and when you're using that paint for a floor, a high gloss really isn't what you want. It's just going to be too bright. You're going to have the reflection of the sun, and it's going to show every little blemish from foot traffic. If you accidentally scrape a cooler across the floor, and you just don't want that. So we're going to be adding a flattening agent, and it's Awlgrip. It's their 3013. For right now, I'm going to focus on getting all the lint off the roller. And the way that I'm going to be doing that is I'm going to be using a really sticky tape. You could use duct tape. I've got some shrink wrap tape, which is what I'm going to use. But I'm basically going to take the roller and, when it's on the roller frame, and roll it up and down the tape. And just, I'll keep peeling off new pieces of tape, rolling it up and down until I am not getting any more lint. If I had done that the first time that I painted, well, I wouldn't have had to wet sand. So it would have saved me an extra step. So, you live and learn. I forgot. It happens. Now, the first time that I mixed up my paint and everything for the first coat, I made way too much. I think I ended up making like 32 ounces, and I only used 10. So I'm going to mix a lot less. So what I've done is I've gone through, and the mixing instructions when you're using this flattening agent are a little different than what they normally are if you're just doing a straight, Awlgrip application. The thinner that they recommend for when you're using this flattening agent is what's called their T1002. It's a very fast evaporating thinner, and if I were spraying, absolutely that's what I'd be using. But I've got other boats in here, so I'm not going to be pulling the trigger on my gun because it'll make a mess. So I'm still going to be rolling and tipping this on. And just for that reason alone, I'm going to use a slow evaporating thinner. I'm going to use the same thinner that I used before, the T1031. And just for the simple fact that it's going to be more work time. Now, one other consideration to keep in mind when working with this flattening agent is that you need to make sure that you don't overwork the surface once you've rolled it on, because the way that this flattening agent works is after you roll out your film, that stuff kind of floats up to the surface and creates a little skim coat on the top layer, and that's what dulls the finish. So if you roll it on and you miss your window, you wait a little bit too long and you come back and you go to tip it off with your brush, what'll actually happen is you'll actually break that top skin with your brush and you're gonna end up having little streaks of high gloss with a satin finish around it. Look a little funky and not right. So I'm gonna work in smaller sections. I'm gonna roll it off, tip it, and then work on to the next section. And just be very careful about that. Now before I roll this coat on, I want to kind of explain a little bit what I'm going to be doing here as far as which areas are going to be textured with the Nonskid and which areas are going to be left smooth. What I'm essentially going to do is, I'm going to leave a 1-inch, I guess, smooth reveal or waterway around the perimeter of each of these panels. And from that point, after I get in from that 1 inch, then the body of this is all going to be non-skidded or textured. But the outside 1 inch is going to be left non-textured. It's going to be left smooth. So when these panels are all up in the boat and in place, then that's going to give me a 1 inch reveal or 1 inch waterway on each panel. So I'm going to have 2 inch total when everything is in place. So when I'm rolling this out on these panels here, I'm not going to coat the entire panel. I'm just going to come in and do one roller width, 9 inches, around the border on here, and then I'm going to let that cure. And then tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, it'll be set up enough where I can tape over it. Then I'll come in, I'll lay down my tape line 1 inch in, all the way around, and then the body of it will then be painted, and then I'll be sprinkling the non-skid texture into that paint. So, in case you're wondering why I'm only doing the outside perimeter of that would be why. And at this point now, everything has been wiped down, tacked off, and the panels are clean. So on each edge now, as soon as I roll it out, I'm going to come back and tip it off. And I can tell already, this roller is much cleaner than what I did the first time through. So now all the paint that we've laid around the border here has cured. I've let it sit for about 3 days just because I wanted to make sure that it was set up enough that I could tape over it without having to worry about it, any of it coming up when I pull the tape. So I've gone through and taped off everything. Like I had mentioned before, I'm going to leave a 1 inch border on each panel all the way around, and I taped off the top sides the same way. So now I'm going to be coming in with some 220 grit and just more or less scuffing everything over. And then we're going to be rolling back over a tack coat of paint. I'm not going to put the flattening agent in this coat because we're going to be sprinkling over our non-skid and then sealing over top of that with a layer that does have the flattening agent in it. So right now, sand it all down, clean it, coat it with the high gloss, and then we're going to let that tack up, and we're going to sprinkle our non-skid in. Well, I have the paint all rolled out and tipped off, and I've let it sit now for probably, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes or so. I just want some of the solvents to flash off a little bit, but I do not want it to skin over because we're going to be sprinkling this all over. And there's a few different ways that you can apply this. The way that I like to do it is I just like to do it by hand, to be honest. You can mix it in with your paint and roll it out. You can put it in these little shakers, but I find it works just as well just to take a pinch, hold your hand up off of the piece, and just basically sprinkle it in. And I tend to be pretty generous with this because after I get all this sprinkled in, I'm going to make sure that it's very well coated, because I'm going to come back with some compressed air on some very, very low pressure. I mean, the air is barely even going to be coming out of the nozzle. And I'm just going to lightly blow this stuff around and so that it uniformly coats everything. And now I've got it pretty well coated. I'm just going to kind of take a look, see if I see any shiny spots. Anywhere that I see any kind of a gloss, I'm going to come back and just lightly sprinkle some more over. All right, here we go. Now, when I'm actually doing this, I'm going to be wearing my respirator. I've got the air pressure set very low. I mean, it would probably blow out a candle from about a foot away, but I mean, it's very, very weak. Like I said, I don't want to get this stuff airborne. I just want to be able to kind of push it around the surface here a little bit. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to put my respirator on, and then let's see how it goes. Now with everything kind of blowing off, now you can kind of see how well everything was actually coated, how uniformly things were coated. And at this point, if there's still some blotchy areas where when you're looking at it, it still looks a little thin, just come back and touch it up while the paint is still wet and kind of tacky. So now is your time to do touch-ups, and I really don't think that there's any such thing as putting on too much, because whatever doesn't stick is just going to get blown off. So look over your patchy spots, kind of fill them in, and then we're going to let this sit overnight. We have to come back and put our sealer coat or our top coat on within 24 hours. After 24 hours, then this paint skins over and you can't just roll right over top of it because it won't bond. There's a 24-hour window where you can, I guess for lack of better, you can laminate and you still get a good bond. So we got to come back in, and I want to make sure this all gases off and pretty well, not cures, but gases off. And then we'll come back, roll on our top coat, and we'll let that sit for a few days, put this back in place up on the boat, and it's ready to go out the door. Now up to this point, I've been using relatively small amounts of paint for for being able to coat everything. I've been able to get all the panels and then everything topside done in about 10 ounces or so. Now, since we're going to be going over this Nonskid or this grip text, this stuff, we're going to go through a lot more paint just because this grip text is going to absorb some of it, and it's going to somewhat fill in some of the really, some of the, I guess, the very shallow parts of the panels here, and which is good. I mean, you want to fill it in a little bit, otherwise dirt and just crud gets stuck down in there, and it's a real pain to clean. So you're not looking to fill it by any means, but you do want to get a little bit down there to kind of seal it off so that nothing can get underneath any of the grip text. So for this round, because we're going to be using the flattening agent, when I did my first mix using the flattening agent, I went for a semi-gloss, and after it cured, it was still a little glossy for my taste. So I think what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to mix this up for an actual flat finish. So for doing that, basically we're going to be mixing equal amounts of the paint, the flattening agent, the catalyst, and the thinner. So I'm going to be mixing up a little larger batch. I'm going to be doing 6 ounces of each. So 6, 12, 18, 24 ounce total mix. And that should do it. It's a little bit smaller of an area up top side that I'm painting because I left in some smooth, what I call waterways, just for appearance and for make it a little easier for water to run off and drain. But that should do it. We'll see. I suspect it's going to be pretty close. And in case any of you are wondering why I'm doing all my videoing on these panels and I'm not really showing much up top, well, to be honest, I don't have any place good to set the camera, and I don't have anybody here to help me. So by the time I get everything set up, really, if I were recording up there, the only thing that you'd be watching would be kind of, my ass kind of bouncing around, and you wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm kind of ass up in the air when I'm up there working, and that, I guess I really don't think that makes for a good video. So that's why I'm doing everything down here. At least down here, you just all you gotta do is look at my ugly face, but at least you can see what I'm doing. So, in case any of you were wondering. All right, everything's laid up, at least on these panels. I went through a total of 24 ounces mixed, you know, with everything all mixed up. 24 ounces total just for these 3 panels. Now that's more than double of what we used to do everything before when we were just doing our smooth coats. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more, but before I do that, I'm going to come in and I'm going to pull all this tape. So I'm hoping if I pull it now, everything will come up nice and clean, and I'll be happy, which is good because my day didn't start off so well. So let's hope this goes better. Well, I gotta say, I am very happy with how this is turning out. Everything rolled out really nice. But the non-skid area is just slightly raised. Nice clean lines, the tape pulled up beautifully. And as long as this cures the way that it's supposed to, I'm gonna be very, very happy with this. Very, very nice. But this was the easy part. This is nice flat panels that I can get all the way around. Now the difficult part's going to be doing the top sides because, well, there's some areas up there that are a little awkward to reach. So hopefully I'll be able to hit what I need to hit and have it turn out well.